The Week in Review with David Davis. Hello, welcome to our latest episode, our YouTube Week in Politics, as it were. This is a busy week, so you may hear in the background division bells going off. I apologise for that in advance. Hopefully you can hear us through it all. This week I initiated a major debate, backbench debate, on the question of housing and the housing shortage. When I was a young man, when I bought my first house, about 65% or so of my contemporaries were doing the same. You know, we had to basically pay about 3 times our income, 3 times the average income to buy a house. That's what it was. Whereas today it's 9 times. So I raised the issue, and there were a significant number of speakers, very, very high number of speakers, for a backbench debate on a one-line Monday. That's a Monday in which MPs don't have to come in. And it was a very, very high-quality debate. And I really recommend having a look at some of the contributions of other members. What I was arguing was that the way we're doing house building at the moment is mostly tacking on little bits to villages and edges of towns and so on, which sort of maximizes the opposition. You have, for 100 houses, you get 1,000 objections, and doesn't necessarily lead to a properly planned and well-developed living environment for people. And so instead, I thought we should copy what happened after both the world wars, when there was a sort of homes fit for heroes movement at the time, and that is to build new garden villages, garden towns, even garden cities. Because if we do that, there are a variety of advantages that come out of it. Firstly, you can build it in areas away from existing developments, minimizing the local backlash. Secondly, you can raise a very large amount of money in the increase in planning value of the land. And you only have to give maybe 10% of that to the landowner. You shouldn't expropriate the land just to agricultural land value, but you can give them maybe 10%. They'll get very rich off the back of that. You can spend a little bit on looking after people who are already there, if need be, even buying out their homes at a slight premium to mitigate any issues there. But most important of all, you'll have lots of money to develop the right sort of infrastructure for a modern town.
But how do we get around the NIMBY problem in its conventional sense? Well, I believe the answer is garden towns and villages, or one large part of the answer is garden towns and villages. And this is not a new proposal. It's a tried and tested policy, albeit with some tweaks that can deliver in the 21st century. Indeed, my honourable friend, the member for South Thanet, has spoken about it before. I've spoken about it before. There have been policy exchange think tank papers on it and the like. So it's not that new, but it is worth resurrecting. In the 20th century, the Garden City movement resulted in the creation of towns like Letchworth and Welwyn Garden City, now populated by about 30 or 40,000 people in each case. Those new garden towns and cities were great successes. What's the measure of that? Well, nearly 3 million people live in the 32 towns created under the New Towns Act. So reviving the ideas will, I think, hold the key to solving much of the existing housing crisis.
One of the things that's come up this week, as the front page of the Daily Telegraph, in fact, is the operation of government units that supposedly, I think one of them is called the Counter Disinformation Unit, CDU, used to be in the DCMS, and now I think it's in the Technology Ministry, which monitored, at very least, these public statements of a whole series of people, including me, including members of Parliament, one of which was me, nominally to eliminate disinformation. Now, this is a pretty extraordinary stance for any government to take, anyway, in a democracy, that they're going to sort of knock out one side of the argument, but particularly in something like COVID disinformation. After all, the government got lots of that so-called information wrong itself. There was another report this week showing how poorly the lockdown policies worked. So some of the what would be characterized as disinformation was people arguing against lockdown. It may well be they were right, the government was wrong. You shouldn't have a disinformation unit when you're dealing with an area of uncertain science, which is not yet established, and where actually best public policy is not actually known. That is, after all, why we've got an inquiry into the whole COVID policy now going on. The next question then is, well, why are you monitoring? What are you going to do about it? And the obvious suspicion is, are you leaning on or requesting big platforms or even the BBC or people like that to not allow this information to make its way to the public? I worry that the government is really reaching way beyond what is democratically proper. Literally today, as I'm making this recording, there was a ruling in court over one of the cases we have been looking at when we've been campaigning on SLAPPs, the strategic litigation against public participants. And this case was the case of Mercy versus Charlotte Leslie. Now, I won't go into the great detail of the case. I made a point of order in the House of Commons, which you can see here.
Madam Deputy Speaker, you'll be well aware, because you've chaired many of the debates, that there's been a campaign in this House for over a year now to stop SLAPPs, that is the use by very rich men to oppress free speech in this country. Just recently, in the last hour or so, the High Court has ruled one of those SLAPPs cases out of order, the case of Mr. Mercy, Mohammed Mercy, against the ex-member of this House, Charlotte Leslie. It's been struck down, which in my view is a great victory for free speech. And because it's so important, I give notice now I will be raising the matter on the adjournment.
There will be a lot of legal scrutiny of this case. And what I recommend is, for those who are interested, to look at the actual judgment that was handed down today, and particularly look at paragraph 240, which talks about the behaviour of Mohammed Mercy and his lawyers, how they behaved, and whether that was entirely appropriate or not. You can make your own judgments on that. It is almost becoming monotonous that we mention AI almost every week at the moment. Hardly surprising. Since we started talking about it, it's suddenly got to the headline basis because people start saying it's dangerous, something we've been saying for some time. And as I speak, Rishi Sunak is in Washington talking about some sort of global settlement on AI. My view is that Rishi is right to raise the question of an international agreement on this, but we must be a bit careful about rushing too fast to get something on paper. The example here is the issue as addressed by the European Union. The European Union were very quick off the mark, and frankly, I sort of commend them on that at one level. Quick off the mark to get some AI regulation on paper, but it turns out maybe they were too quick. So we can probably gain from being a little late into that game and from understanding in more depth precisely where we see the risks are. Well, this has been an odd week in Parliament. At one level, it's been very low level in terms of the government business going through, and the Prime Minister's been away and so on. At another level, a lot of things have happened in the background from the housing debate onwards. So it's been an unusual week, but one which I think we've come up with some quite interesting issues on. So I look forward to talking to you again next week. Meanwhile, if you like today, then hit like, subscribe, tell your friends, because the issues that are coming up at the moment are not just the standard left-right issues between Labour and Tory and Liberal and so on. They're really new issues for the age.